Welcome back live for Treasury Talks. We have two special guests today, British HODL and MC Khristina. Khristina, we've had you on a few times now, but British HODL, first time on the show, and you said first podcast in a while too, so we feel very honored. But both of you guys, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
So you guys have been, I think, Khristina, you've made a great choice to enjoy Thanksgiving, not be plugged into markets. It's been sideways, it's been chop. We had FOMC yesterday, and then Oracle completely popped the bubble on the market, and things have been ugly. And then British, you've been traveling around. You've done a lot of, you were down at, I believe, Abu Dhabi. You had dinner with Peter Schiff, which we want to get into today. And if you haven't checked it out, one of the best YouTube channels in the game right now, fresh content almost daily, I'm seeing. So definitely check out British HODLs. So for you guys, how's the vibe? How's the sentiment? Where are you guys both kind of sitting, as we're like in December, and we haven't really started bull run, it seems.
Well, ladies first, otherwise my mom would kill me.
I would say, I've been unplugged for the last couple of weeks since kind of before Thanksgiving. I made a conscious decision to kind of unplug from Twitter and trade a little bit less. And I can tell you that not much has changed. I have conviction in the positions that I hold, and I continue to add to Bitcoin. And that's just where I'm at. I've found it to be quite refreshing. And the reality is, I think when I was as plugged in as I was, like reading every headline, reading every news source, I was over trading out of boredom, and just decided that there's more to do, off social media. So I've been trying to be a little bit more present with my family and friends, and, get ready for the holidays. And it's hard to say that I'll ever actually come back and be as fully plugged in as I was before, because I really don't think it matters.
Amen.
From my perspective, I am increasingly more and more bullish on what's going on here. I don't think that we've topped for this quote-unquote halving cycle. I think that we've got another run to go. There's multiple different reasons for that, which we can get into as we go on. I have a much more combative personality than Khristina, so I really love seeing how stupid people are, and so I love my X and my YouTube comments and everyone telling me I'm a delusional bull and I'm completely wrong and the top is in and the bear market's here, etc., etc. I absolutely, utterly I love every single FUD article on MSTR. I love every single insulting tweet about Michael Saylor. I love every single bear, because you know why? Because when I go through it, when we win, I will dance on their graves and I will rip their hearts out and eat them. So yes, I've actually really enjoyed this little bearish period, even though I've been traveling and everything else. So it sort of helps balance out things a little bit.
Yeah, how was the vibe? I know we're in MENA. We did not make it this year, but what was the vibe like over there?
Yeah, vibe was great. I think Bitcoin is going institutional. I think I've been putting out content now for like 3.5 years, and my main message was BlackRock's in the game. You guys are about to get screwed, and now it's playing out, and everyone's acting like this is completely unheard of. So But when I say you guys are going to get screwed, it's not like BlackRock's trying to screw you. They're playing the game just as all of us should be playing the game, which is the acquisition game of acquiring as much Bitcoin as possible. They're just playing it better. They're going to manipulate your emotions. They're going to manipulate your dopamine receptors, and you're going to end up giving up your Bitcoin. And that's just how the world works.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, when we talked about this last week, with Charles Schwab allowing spot trading. I mean, everything's moving institutional, right? And so you got to be careful because the manipulation out there. Say again?
PNC Bank just recently announced their partnership and joint venture with Coinbase, allowing their customers to buy and hold Bitcoin at the bank. And this is like what has historically been like a small regional, like Midwest Pennsylvania bank, right? And like, if they're doing it and they're one of the first to do it, I mean, we clearly are going institutional. And adoption is just going to increase, I think, at a greater pace over time.
Yeah.
I think on the side of, as British, you talked about dopamine. I think people expect it to be 2017 where you're going to get these 10K daily candles. And my personal take is I think institutions are like licking their chops at that, where they're going to short every big pump, every big candle, like on the daily. And people are going to be leveraging, 30, 40X and trying to capture the biggest move possible. But as we saw yesterday, Powell, during his speech, big candle up to 34, and then immediately, it goes down another like 4K right after that. And some of that was driven by, the Oracle earnings, not missing, I think, on the revenue side. But people, I think, with dopamine is like retail is very predictable in the sense of people are going to latch on to the FOMO. They see a candle happen, they're going to long the top, try to expect to keep going, and that's just not how like efficient markets work.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things about price action that I kind of noticed sort of beginning of the year, where massive or what should be massive dips were being bought up quite quickly, right? And so you would, instead of seeing like in the last cycle, the previous cycle to that, you would have seen things that happened like the 80,000 Bitcoin that were put into the market by Galaxy. Like that would have caused a 15 or 20% dip in Bitcoin, but that didn't. It caused a 3% dip. And the reason is because institutions and sophisticated buyers don't buy like retail crack cocaine addicts. They buy by having trailing limit orders, and they wait for the price to come to those trailing limit orders. And that's what's going on here, right? And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, there's a smart buyer in the market. And, all of these things, all of these little pumps and this, that, and the other are just going to, and everyone calls it manipulation. I don't call it manipulation. I call it playing the game. I don't believe in the idea that markets are manipulated, especially the American markets, right? Even when you look at, for example, gold and silver and everything else, everyone always blames JP Morgan for gold manipulation, whatever. Just go read all you have. It's a low IQ sign, because all you have to do is go and read the actual lawsuits, and you'll see that the extent of the manipulation was price spoofing in the markets, right? And and I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it affected at any time, JP Morgan affected the gold price by 0.3%. So there's institutional games which retail don't understand, and so they call it manipulation. This is just how institutions work.
What do you think? There's like some fuckery going around though, because like at least in the
there's always some fuckery going on.
Yeah, because they'll pay some writer to write a hit piece, and then they'll be buying.
Of course,
so
that's what happened with that's what happened with the MSCI thing, right? Like everyone was talking about, JP Morgan. That looked like absolute short cover liquidity to me. It came absolutely at the perfect in the market. MSTR, which it should, took the brunt of Bitcoin's downforce because it's a leveraged Bitcoin alternative. And as they needed to cover the shorts, guess what happened? Some news comes out, retail shits itself, sells into the market, and they cover the shorts, and then you find the bottom.
So I guess as we, you said a couple of things that I think are very interesting. We've got this kind of new market with the institutional players, and you said you're as bullish sort of as ever, and we're sitting here in the low 90s, I guess, right? So I'm not trying to comment as much on the price action, but if we compare back to a year ago, we're in a different type of environment than we were expecting in 2020 forward. So for the two of you who have more experience in the markets, I'm curious sort of for your perspective on, how retail investors might think about this, or how Bitcoin holders can think about what's going on here. Is it just that, like, as things happen, the institutions are going to be doing predictable things if you know what they are, and zoom out to the bigger picture? Or are there other things that you think retail investors should keep in mind?
I mean, I personally am surprised at where we are at this point of the year in terms of Bitcoin's price. But I think in hindsight, and we may have talked about this on the last podcast, I do think there was just some strategic selling by some of the larger whales trying to time the cycle and, get in front of the timing of that this month and last month. In terms of retail, I mean, I don't trade my Bitcoin. I stack Bitcoin as often as I can stack it. I try to be disciplined. I try to be strategic about it, but like, I'm not trying to trade it. And so I'm surprised where we are on the price of Bitcoin, but I do think we'll continue to grind higher. And if it wasn't this year, I'm surprised it wasn't this year, but not too surprised in hindsight, just given, the questions around the cycle dynamics.
Yeah.
From my perspective, Bitcoin is a really good sentiment and liquidity sniffer, right?
Yeah.
Sentiment's been in the toilet. The stock market looks like it's doing well, but it's really been an AI concentrated uplift in the stock market. That is changing as we speak, because what you're seeing is small caps starting to run up, right? While the NASDAQ and the S&P are kind of like lagging. And that's a really good sign for an early bull cycle sign, because what it means is the cycle is basically the market is broadening out, right? So we're taking some profits from the concentrated positions and we're buying up some of the broad market, like the smaller companies, right? That's a really good sign. What we should see now is we had the Fed cut yesterday. We had the Fed announce $40 billion of purchases in the next 30 days. I think that starts tomorrow. What we should see at this point is the next PMI reading should go up. If soon as that breaches something like 50 to 55, we should see confidence tick up in the market. As that happens, more and more liquidity is going to come into the market, and stimulus and everything else that President Trump and Secretary Bessent are working on. As that happens, you're going to see people go further risk on and take some profits and move them around everywhere, and everyone's going to get really excited. And that's what's going to kick off a true bull run. Right now, from my perspective, we have not seen a bull run. Therefore, you're not going to see a bear market.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that statement. We haven't had the blow off top, so we haven't had a truly bull market with respect to Bitcoin.
So you guys think that is coming down the pipeline? Because I've heard mixed. We're having Adrian Morris on tomorrow. He's talking about like it's stair stepping now because there's so much money in, and it's kind of following more of a gold trajectory where it's not going to have these crazy pops anymore. You guys think there's still a chance we have one of those days where it pops up 5% or larger?
Yes.
I'm not sure, honestly. Could we move 5% in a day? Sure. But I think the more likely scenario is probably with what Adrian's perspective is, where it's more like just, a stair step grind higher.
Yeah. So on the other side of that, how about down? So I guess one thesis that I had was that institutions don't really want to advise their clients to put something in that's going to go down 30% in a week while the rest of the markets are not. That they want something that's slightly more predictable. Do you think that there's going to be sort of a institutional bid that would sort of put floors on some of this downward stuff, even if they sort of sell it back into the market when it comes back higher? We're starting to see more of the institutions say put 4% or whatever it is into Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on that for both of you as well?
I mean, I don't think institutions are going to come in and stabilize price because they've told their clients to allocate, a small percentage of their portfolio to Bitcoin. So that's my thought.
I think that the stair-step approach is correct until retail gets involved. Retail will come in at some point. There's been no retail attention into Bitcoin in any mass way thus far. When the price starts going up enough, retail will get involved. And just with the supply dynamics of the asset, you are going to see some kind of blow off top. It's not going to be like what we've seen in the past. It's not going to be like a tripling in 3 weeks or whatever. But you will see some kind of blow off top, and the momentum's going to basically turn. I think institutions are fantastic buyers in that environment, right? They'll do a really good job at seeing when that momentum is turning, and they'll lift their buy orders off. They'll let the price come down. We'll go into an extended distribution pattern. And I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the type of, bear markets that we've had, because I think markets are overall pretty reflective, right? So, however much we go down, it's kind of like what we go up, and however much we go up, it's kind of like what we go down. So, yeah, I think I could easily see a 60% distribution pattern after a blow off top, but I don't think we're going to see the 70 to 80 to 90% again.
Yeah. I'm curious to see on a friend of ours, he goes like on Twitter, it's like Problem Sniper, but he's a daily like options trader. And he was looking at banks this morning and he's saying, regional banks are pretty strong. Large cap banks are strong right now. And he doesn't ever see the market dip strongly when the banks are performing well. But it's going to be very interesting to see if, these like Mag 7 and any AI name that's trading at a high multiple does take somewhat of a beating. While I think British, you mentioned liquidity on the bottom, small caps are rising, and how Bitcoin is like how correlated to each of those sectors is Bitcoin going to trade? Is it going to trade like small cap? Is it going to trade like gold, or is it going to trade more like these big names like Nvidia and Mag 7?
Bitcoin's not trading like a risk-off asset. Like that's the one thing that people seem to get wrong. Like everyone's looking at Bitcoin going, it's a risk-off asset. And yeah, me as a Bitcoin maxi, I also see it as a risk-off asset, but it's not trading at all like a risk-off asset. It's trading absolutely like a risk-on asset. And I did a video on this, might even be 2 years ago now, where I said like, there's a risk curve. And at this moment in time, Bitcoin is on the furthest end of that risk curve. Right, and as far as big, large-sized assets go, and so that's what's going to happen. And as it evolves, as the narratives shift, it will move down that risk curve. But we're not there yet.
Swatch. I can't speak. Should we switch over to 21?
Yeah, the big news.
We are Treasury Talk. So, so big news this week. 21 finally IPO'd. Seeing some big money obviously behind that, and curious what your thoughts are. I mean, treasury companies in general are they're all 80-90% down basically. We were talking real quickly about Metaplanet before the show, and because it was having a good couple days in a row, there seemed to be some like weird things happening at the end of the day. It would pop and then it would drop right in the morning for like 4 days in a row. I was checking out, but in general, do you think that they've hit their good time to start looking at some of these again, because you want to buy when markets are bloody, more or less?
You want me to take this one first?
I mean, I've shared my views. My views haven't really changed, and I'm happy to kind of reiterate what I've been saying. Like, I'm not allocating additional dollars to Bitcoin treasury companies here. I still have my positions. I'm continuing to hold them, but over the course of the last few months, a lot more question marks have been raised for me personally, and even in the advent of MicroStrategy or Strategy, for example, launching what is it now, 5 different preferreds, and preferreds being the be all end all. Like, Strategy stock is still in the toilet, right? And so the common stock, and so everyone's thinking, preferreds are the holy grail. And, I think they probably are too, but it only really matters for the common if the common stock starts to work and benefit from it. We're all holding out for Metaplanet, hopefully getting preferreds listed in Japan. I think, there's still a question mark there as to whether or not, from a regulatory perspective, that's going to move forward. I think it will, because if not, that's, a really, really big problem. But I've also come to the realization that maybe, it's going to take time. It's taking, like MicroStrategy has all these preferred products. They were able to buy 10,000 or so Bitcoin last week, primarily from ATMing one of the preferred products. And yet the common is literally down. I was looking at it a little bit.
Last week, the ATM, the common, they only took a few $1 million from the preferreds last week. Okay.
MicroStrategy's down almost 60% over the last year, and down 46% over the last 3 months. Like, So
Been brutal.
Excited about the preferreds, but it's not impacting or benefiting the performance of the common stock.
Yeah.
I'm so glad Christina's saying this. I haven't heard her latest opinions because she used to spend her days cussing me out on X for not believing in
out on X. Oh, okay.
for not believing in Metaplanet, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really good. I'm glad that the markets therapy session has worked here. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
So look, the reality on Treasury companies is this. I'm a big MSTR supporter. I support Michael Saylor. I support the whole team over there. I bought MSTR first on the very first trading day post their announcement of their Bitcoin Treasury decision in 2020.
Okay.
So I think that I think there's going to be one winner in every country. I think strategy is the winner in the United States. As far as actually building a Bitcoin treasury goes, most people don't understand the business model. The business model is to build a speculative platform on top of its Bitcoin holdings. And that means that if Bitcoin goes up 1%, MSTR should go up 2%. And if Bitcoin goes down 1%, MSTR should go down 2%, which it exactly has, right? Bitcoin's dropped 30%. MSTR has dropped 60%. It's the business model of it being a speculative platform for the derivatives markets, the traders, the hedgers, and everyone else is working. That volatility allows them to issue the preferred stocks. The issue that all these other treasury companies have got is that they're basically copying strategy. And if I'm an investor, I want the biggest one. I want the most stable one. I want the biggest one. I want the one that's backed by the most amount of credibility. And that's going to be strategy. I will mention 21 in a second, but all these other companies all around the world, I support every single person, every single company, and every single institution that wants to buy Bitcoin and increase Bitcoin ownership. That doesn't mean I need to own your stock, right? Because most of these are sacks of shit. That's the reality of them. They're sacks of shit. They don't have enough volume. They'll tick up the volume, and then so here's the problem with most of these, right? They're saying that their business plan is ATMing the stock, right? They're selling the stock at the money when it's a premium so they can buy more Bitcoin at it, and they're hoping that that's going to give them some kind of propulsion to the stock. That only affects it if the volume is there to be able to do the ATM, because otherwise you're killing the stock price.
Right.
And there's no volume. Right? For most of them, there's no volume. MSTR, there is volume, right? And that's a really good thing. So I think it's like the 17th highest volume stock or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But so MSTR is going to win. All these other ones, I don't know. The preferred market in Japan is terrible. So we'll see what happens with that. I think MSTR actually listing a preferred product in Japan, calling it STRJ, actually has a better chance than Metaplanet listing their own preferreds, because MSTR will go in with the credibility of the American stock market and actually open that market up, whereas Metaplanet is tapping a market, right? They're not opening a market. So I think there's advantage to that. But again, I want to reiterate so that the new Christinas that are cussing me out on Twitter now can relax. I support every single person, constitution that wants to increase Bitcoin ownership. I support all of them. That does not mean I need to own their sack of shit, right? So
I think I read Satsuma sold half of their Bitcoin today or yesterday to pay their convert.
Amazing. That's exactly what should happen.
And having a convert due less than a year after you IPO'd.
It's probably a bad idea.
Yeah, and how many people actually knew that there was a convert that was due that close if they had bought Satsuma stock? So
yeah, they don't know, because all they're doing is joining X communities and buying up everything that everyone keeps tweeting about. This is the problem with dopamine, right? One of the ways that you trick your dopamine, someone's dopamine receptors, is keep repeating the same shit over and over again, and that's what happened, right? Now, as far as strategy goes, I think strategy is the best positioned treasury company. It actually has a business plan. It is building a base of products that are extremely valuable. It's figured out a way to take its Bitcoin volatility and basically turn it into dividend payments. You don't need to worry about where those dividend payments are coming from. The moment they're trusted, the moment they're graded, capital will start flowing into those preferred products. That will provide more Bitcoin for the common stock, and then the common stock will have more as long as it matches the volatility of Bitcoin. Because the reality is this: Bitcoin has to go up. If Bitcoin's not going up, none of these things are going to do any well, right? And they're not doing good. Bitcoin has to go up. And right now, Bitcoin, therefore, they're all going to get hit. The question is how much are they going to get hit? And really, strategies, as far as I'm concerned, the business plan is working. We are a leveraged Bitcoin offering. And leverage works to the upside and the downside, right? So it's working as planned. Now, 21 is a special case because it's backed by Cantor Fitzgerald. Cantor Fitzgerald is one of 24 prime firms in the US that can actually generate liquidity directly from the Federal Reserve. It's backed by Tether. Tether is what looks like the chosen stablecoin of choice for the US government to send its treasuries around the world, and also to defund other central banks that don't play ball. So it's a really interesting strategy. And then the master stroke, to a certain extent, we'll see if it plays out like this, but they got Jack in front of it, right? Jack has a product called Strike, which is the distribution channel in this whole thing. So I think what you'll see is, I was talking to a couple people. I don't know if he wants me to mention his name, so I won't do it. But I was talking to a couple people, and the thinking is that Strike's going to get rolled up into 21, and that's going to be the distribution channel of this whole model, right? Cantor Fitzgerald's got a lending book on Bitcoin already. USDT is the way that you would borrow against your Bitcoin, and Strike is the distribution methodology for that. And it's a great model.
And
do they have the
SoftBank at the table too?
And they've got SoftBank, yeah. So do they? But the question is, do they have a chance at acquiring the same stack of Bitcoin? I met a bunch of Bitcoin Treasury people at Bitcoin MENA, and my point was, right, all of you guys are fighting for second place as far as I'm concerned, right? Like none of you are catching up to MSTR as far as Treasury size goes. And one person made a really good rebuttal, and he said, yeah, we're fighting for second place as far as Treasury remains to be seen who gets number one place on returns from here. That's a really good rebuttal, right? Because what that means is that the degen trading market is going to be interested, and that volatility is going to suck in people, and that's a good thing for an industry. You're gonna have to watch out, and you're gonna have to be really smart as you trade these things. Mm-hmm. But that's what happens. But I think 21 has, because of the partners involved, primarily Cantor Fitzgerald and Tether. I think they have a really good shot at being a very important treasury company. We'll see whether they manage to do it or not.
Yeah,
I agree.
Matt Cole came on here. This was a couple weeks ago. We went to the Cantor Fitzgerald conference, and then he mentioned that was around just performance at his current size versus someone large like 21. He thinks that Strive could outperform them from here on out. That remains to be seen. Like, we'll obviously be tracking that. I wanted to share this. I think this is exactly why we love having you on, Khristina. Like you said, British, you have so many people that are in echo chamber, repeating the same stuff, retweeting the same, they put it through AI, they take someone they love and let me, can you reformulate this in AI? And then they tweet it out themselves to get engagement. But this is all a mouthpiece and it's marketing. I really appreciate, Khristina, that you're calling out, hey, here's the actual funding methods. Here, it's a SPAC, with 21, it's a pipe. Here's where particular unlocks are. Just be very careful, looking out for the average investor. We need more people that are looking out and saying, hey, here's how you need to educate yourself on how markets work. If that price starts going down, it's probably going to go like the pipe level.
Well, look at what happened to Nakamoto, right? Nakamoto's like 60% off the pipe. I invested in the Nakamoto pipe. Yeah. Just listen, I got caught up with my friends investing at the same time, and I like David, and it was like, all right, let's see what happens. So for me, but every time I spoke about it, I said I have like basis points of my net worth in Nakamoto. It's not like I'm liquidating 50%. This is the problem, guys. During the summer, here's what people did. They had a stack of Bitcoin. They joined X communities, and then they liquidated that stack of Bitcoin and put it into fucking treasury companies at 7x MNAVs. And then Bitcoin collapsed. And then the volume on those stocks collapsed. And then those stocks collapsed. That's what's going on. So what you're seeing is degen shitcoin traders that are masquerading as Bitcoiners, thinking that Bitcoin hodlers and treasury company shitcoin trading is the same thing. It's not. Different. They are very different. And so there's people that are Bitcoin. I know most Bitcoiners that I know that are long-term hodlers have some treasury company exposure, most of them, right? But it's not 50% of their fucking net worth.
Yeah. British, are you a buyer of MSTR on big dips right now, or are you similar to Khristina? You're kind
I'm always a buyer of MSTR. I'm always a buyer of MSTR. Like I said, I clearly, you know, there was like a 3-month period where I failed to see the business proposition, the changing business proposition of MSTR, and that was basically the 3 months after IBIT launched, right? Because my initial thought process was there's no institutional access to Bitcoin, and MSTR is going to be that institutional access. Guess what? It was, right? And then IBIT came out. So my thought process was, okay, I need to, you know, scale out on my position and convert it to IBIT. I was right for about 3 weeks. And then I was aggressively wrong for 3 months. And then I had to rethink what was going on and reformulate what was happening. So yes, I'm a buyer of MSTR. It is a leveraged speculative platform. That's the way I'm describing it, on Bitcoin, on the nuclear growth engine of Bitcoin. And if you believe that Bitcoin is going to go up, then MSTR is going to go up. And my price target on MSTR is above $30,000 a share within 10 years. Now, that sounds ridiculous, but if you realize that if you factor in Amazon stock right now, taking away all of the splits, it would be $54,000 a share. So if you don't think MSTR can get to $30,000 a share, you're stupid.
Clip that one, Jody. That's a good clip. No, I mean, it is fascinating. I've held on the way down. You know, I'm not shy to say it. It sucks. I also bought, you know, a decent chunk at like 370, which was stupid of me looking back. But yeah,
but you never know that. You can only judge something going forward, right? You can only trying to go, oh, I was stupid to buy at 370 when the stock's sitting at 175 or whatever it is right now.
Right. Hindsight capital.
Fool's errand. Yeah, exactly.
But I think one of the things that a lot of people have struggled with is, you know, am I selling at the bottom? And for a lot of people, I don't know that they completely understood the thesis that they were investing in, right? Yep. Like with these treasury companies and everything like that, they're still Bitcoin, right? You know, for any missteps that, you know, we'll use Metaplanet as an example, for any missteps with anything that they've done in the past 6 months, they still accreted Bitcoin per share in the last 6 months, right? Did they do it as well as they could have? Are there, you know, side things that they could have done better? Probably. And then what is that Bitcoin going to do over the next 10 years or 20 years? And do they face insolvency? Okay.
I agree with what you're saying in the principle that they are accumulating Bitcoin. I disagree with it will fix it because Bitcoin will go up. Because what you got to realize is that Bitcoin has its CAGR, right? That's 30%, let's say. That's Michael Saylor's number. Strategy's got its CAGR. Strategy is the #1 alternative, right? So Strategy's CAGR should basically be like 45 to 60%, something like that, right? To make it make sense, because it's a leveraged option on Bitcoin. All these other treasury companies, they don't have to beat Bitcoin. They have to beat Strategy. That's how they survive. If Metaplanet just matches Bitcoin, that's an utter failure. That's an utter failure simply just based on the risk-adjusted returns. It's an utter failure because you could have just had IBIT with no worrying about what's going on in Japan, no worrying about anything going on over there. You just hold IBIT and generate your 30%. They have to beat MSTR, because if I want to hold Metaplanet, the conversation is, do I hold Metaplanet or MSTR? Not do I hold Metaplanet or Bitcoin? That's the stupid conversation that happened on X communities.
I agree with that. I guess one of the other points is, though, has the ability for a smaller company to grow faster that we were talking about before, that argument that you were hearing from people at MENA, or, that Matt Cole said about Strive compared to XXI, does that still hold? You also mentioned number one winners in markets, right? So is there going to be somebody who's going to outplace, Metaplanet in Japan if they have fewer missteps, if any, in the future? And those are the types of things that could give you that. And I think my point, and Khristina said she's not putting more money into this. I invested in Metaplanet, I invested in Strategy, I invested in a few other companies as well, just a handful. I haven't sold any of those because the thesis that I invested in didn't change. I need to give it time. If it went to the moon, I wasn't going to sell it in December of this year anyway, to just sell it at the top. I want to give it time. And I think too many people are sort of just like trying to trade in and out of these things.
100%. But my point is that the thesis for all of these treasury companies, if you are a treasury company investor, the thesis is, can this beat MSTR's returns, not Bitcoin, right? That you have to look at things from a risk-adjusted basis, not like a degen, right? Look at it like a portfolio manager, like somebody like that's actually managing a portfolio. It's a risk-adjusted return. It's on MSTR. It's not Bitcoin. And so that's the hard part for me to invest in any of these things. And I actually had, I wanted to invest a reasonable amount of capital as these things were taking off. And I invested in Nakamoto. It took a 4-minute conversation with a friend, DM David Bailey, and basically it was like, okay, done. There was no due diligence. It was just purely like an emotional, I love what David's done. I love the fact that he got the president aligned on Bitcoin. So I wanted to support that, right? So that was an emotional play. Then I started looking at all the offerings I was getting, and I was like, none of these are interesting, because I just rather just hold MSTR. Right. And so I think a lot of people have mistaken this, and it's kind of like seeing all of these companies as like some magical fairy-go-rounds, and they're all copying MSTR. MSTR is the only one that's innovating, and all of them have issues in their own markets that don't allow them to access capital the way that MSTR is doing it. Listen to what I just said. MSTR could probably launch a preferred product in Japan faster than Metaplanet.
Strategy has basically said they can't launch it faster than Metaplanet, and I'm not even sure they're continuing to pursue it in Japan. I'd have to go back and find the reference that I'm referring to, but I think they have self-admitted that they ran into regulatory issues and hurdles in Japan that will kind of inhibit their ability to launch preferreds there.
Interesting.
Saylor did say he's going to give Simon a year at least.
I was just going to mention that. At Bitcoin MENA, he said, Simon said, if I tell you what I'm going to do, are you going to copy me? And Saylor said, I'll give you 12 months. And here's an interesting story I heard about Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs was talking to a reporter, and they were talking about one of the iPods that was launching. And one of the reporters said, oh, you should put video on the iPod. And Steve said, nobody wants to watch video on such a small device. And that was 3 months before they launched the video iPod.
Gamesmanship. Yeah. One thing, the Cantor conference that Jack Mallers said before the IPO is he wasn't rushed to do any preferred equity. He sees them as debt. He wants to go all in on the operating side, continue what Strike's doing, exchange, lending, acting as a bank. I think Strike did say the word bank in one of their pieces. Do you guys think that's going to be winning strategy? They obviously have the firepower, Tether, SoftBank behind them, or are out on this digital credit move?
No, I absolutely think it can be a winning strategy. And, I get excited when I hear about, Jack wanting to focus on the operating part of the businesses that generate cash flows and going about it in a different way. We don't need multiple people, especially in the US, just trying to copy Strategy's playbook. Because as British has said, no one's catching up to Strategy. Strategy has their 600,000 plus Bitcoin and their business model, and they're executing it. We don't need another mini Strategy. And so I like that Jack is really focused on, Bitcoin operating businesses, generating cash flow. And I think that's going to make them unique and a reason to own not only 21, but also strategy.
Yeah, I think there's merit.
Strategy and, a Strive. Like, why would I own Strive over strategy? I wouldn't. That's me.
I think there's a lot of merit to what Khristina just said. I would argue that Jack saying that is quite irrelevant, because he's got basically a master of financial engineering as one of the founders, which is Cantor Fitzgerald. So whatever Jack says is cool, and he should focus on the operating business because that's his domain expertise, and he should let Cantor Fitzgerald focus on financial engineering because that's their domain expertise, and they should both let Tether focus on USDT integration because that's their. So that's the advantage of 21, because you got these three masters of their own domains kind of coming together to see what can happen here. But again,
and don't forget SoftBank, because they have,
and SoftBank, yes,
they're a major capital provider.
Yeah.
They're not scared to spend ever.
Mastercon is always been thought of as a visionary investor, and he's at the table. So I think I really like all of those components.
Yep.
And there's
the question. Sorry. The question that I have is, how much more would 21 have to return me than the CAGR on MSTR for me to be interested? And then the question is, how much more does the CAGR on MSTR need to be for me to be interested in MSTR over Bitcoin? Right? That's how I think about my allocations. And so, like, if MSTR CAGRs me 45 to 60%, like, what would 21 need to do for me to take that risk, right? So that's the way I think about it, which is why I think the financial engineering part is extremely important, because if you just rely on these basic retail kind of ways of thinking, then I think you're going to be left in the dust. So they're going to need to lean on Cantor Fitzgerald's creative thinking to get some of this moving.
No, but she raised a really good point. You're like always comparing investments, right? And you're talking about what CAGR do you need to get out of this company versus strategy versus Bitcoin. And, when I look at my portfolio, and although it's, it's fairly diversified, I ask myself the same question. If I have a position in Galaxy, which I don't currently, and Mike Novogratz is the CEO, and I know, their business model is a little bit more diverse. Do I want to put my money behind Mike Novogratz and Galaxy, or would I rather have that same dollar allocation behind Jack Mallers and 21? And so you think about the management teams, you think about the businesses, you think about the return potentials, and you do that for every security that you own. I've mentioned recently, and this is another topic that you guys wanted to talk about when we had the last podcast, like my largest single stock position, and I own Leaps, is AST SpaceMobile, ticker ASTS.
Yes, yeah.
And, I think about the return potential there, the total addressable market there, SpaceX, supposedly IPOing next year, which will be the largest IPO ever, like larger, I think, that I read than like Saudi Aramco. And when they're talking about a 1.6 trillion valuation, and you have AST SpaceMobile at only a 26 billion market cap, and they have, better technology, better partnerships. It's just, you always compare investments in terms of where you think you're going to get the best return and who you want to back from a management perspective.
I think it would do anyone watching this, like, because we're all retail investors, right? Just with different levels of experience. Yeah. It would be very important for you to like tattoo on your forehead risk-adjusted returns, yes. And then think from a risk-adjusted returns perspective, no matter what you're reading.
Yeah, I think Jordy Visser said it a lot in the last week, thinking in bets, right? So where are you betting, but what are you betting against? And it's as important to say, I want to put money over here, but like, what am I not allocating to as a result of that, versus just, I have money, I got to put it in something. So
yeah, and if you're a Bitcoiner, Bitcoin's your hurdle rate, right? That's the way I think about it. So it's like Bitcoin's my zero.
And so, and then strategy companies, right? So you should.
Yeah, like I look, to me, the way I think about a portfolio is there's three buckets, right? There's the savings bucket, the investment bucket, and an income bucket. That's it. If you just simplify that model, right? So Bitcoin to me is my savings, so therefore it's the zero number, right? That's going to maintain my energy, maintain whatever fancy ways we want to talk about it. It's going to maintain purchasing power. That's the zero. So now what goes into the investment bucket and what goes into the income bucket, that we can debate about.
ASTS was one of the SPAC survivors. Not many made it through. So I actually called this out. I was saying the Treasury companies early on just reminds me of SPACs, where it's like everyone thinks that you can't lose. You know, everyone's getting excited. You think it's free money, and then 90% of them disappear, right? So I'm curious. You also think like this time next year, do you think we're at 25% less Treasury companies? You think a lot of these guys will just be like, all right, we can't compete. We're sitting on Bitcoin, and the business is not going to go away, right? Because they do have the actual Bitcoin. However, from a stock perspective, if people are going to be buying, it's more of an attention thing, right? And so if no one's buying their stock, eventually they're going to figure they have to do something, right?
Like, I think we could have 25% less Bitcoin Treasury companies than we do today from the existing Bitcoin Treasury companies. However, I do think other companies will add Bitcoin to the balance sheet over the course of the next year. And then I guess it comes down to how are you defining, Bitcoin Treasury companies? Like, I think, yes, 25% of the existing ones will probably go away, but I do think we will add more in the future.
Yeah.
I think there should be 1,000 Bitcoin Treasury companies. Let's go. Like as many people that want to buy Bitcoin as possible should enter the market. Just don't expect me to buy your fucking sack of shit stock. Right? Anyone else can do it. Do whatever you want to do. Right? It's your money.
I think the days are over of like a shitty company just pivoting and announcing they're going to become a Bitcoin Treasury company.
Yeah.
And raising capital to buy Bitcoin via an ATM, like those days are over.
I think that's done. Yeah, I agree.
So at some point, we're going to see a Fortune 100 company do financial engineering that's going to involve Bitcoin that's more than just buying and put it on the balance sheet, right? And once that happens, these small companies are going to have no chance whatsoever to do something different. I don't know if that's next year or 10 years from now, but sometime they're going to do that because they've all followed the financial engineering playbook at this point.
Yeah, and I think it'll happen sooner rather than later. I mean, the reality is a lot of these companies have been waiting for greater regulatory clarity in terms of what they're able to do. And now we're getting that. And so with increased regulatory clarity, larger companies are able to make more strategic moves.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a question regarding that. Like, I don't know, because it's like, let's say I hold Apple, right? Like I'm holding Apple from whatever reason, but the underlying is I believe in Apple's ability to create some products that people want to buy, right? That's really the underlying reason why I'm holding Apple. So it's like, what if Apple told me, okay, we're struggling now to figure out some new shit. So what we're going to do is buy Bitcoin, and then we're going to rely on Bitcoin to provide our growth. At that point, how do I feel as an investor, right? It's like, why don't I just go buy Bitcoin through IBIT? Like, why do I need Apple to do it, right? So I do wonder how that works for bigger companies. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah.
What about share buybacks, though, and a lot of the other things that they've been doing when they don't have profitable ways to spend the capital?
But that's great, though, because now you're giving me the control, right? Like if you do share buybacks versus buying Bitcoin, you're giving me the control of what to do, because I can sell those shares and go put it into whatever I want to put it into. It's basically like, giving a dividend.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the narrative could be, we're going to take a small portion of our long-term working capital, and rather than have it just sit there in fiat, and we're going to allocate a small portion to Bitcoin because we don't need to access this long-term working capital from what we can tell in the next, couple of years. And so just them trying to get...
Why would you put it in a 30, 40 vol asset? Why wouldn't you just do share buybacks and give it back to me?
Well, then they need the capital down the road. I guess they just raise more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense for a big company to do that. The message is wrong.
I think with the one thing, I think just tying back to the last show with Khristina, is we have seen a big shift in hardcore, you'd say Bitcoin maxis, like we're all in on Bitcoin, obviously 21 rates, is being willing to talk about other investments. So many, I think, see Jack Mallers and he's only has Bitcoin. That's all he's in on. He's in a very different position, right? He's been doing this. He has plenty of like liquidity coming from what he's doing at Strike. That's not that's not the norm. That's not the case for everyone. Everyone needs to invest differently. You should not miss on AI. I think you look at Elon Musk, he's doing more than electric cars. He's doing the Boring Company. He's doing the AI side, which is tied in SpaceX.
Robotics.
So we loved asking you about that, Christina. British, you were previously like trading gold. For both of you guys and for the audience, what are you guys excited about? What is the investments that you're saying, hey, I think this is going to outperform Bitcoin. I either think it's going to be an amazing investment, or I just believe in the space. I want like nuclear to do well because we need more energy.
My ideas haven't really changed since we last spoke. Like, I'm still super excited about AST SpaceMobile, especially on the back of this week's headlines about SpaceX's IPO. I'm still excited about Kraken Robotics in terms of a derivative play off of Anduril in defense. I'm still excited about, kind of a special situations opportunity in Fannie Mae. I still own Nebius and believe in the AI infrastructure trade. And so I think all four of those we may have spoken about last time, and those are still tend to be some of my higher conviction ideas across, different sectors.
Yeah, for me, I'm excited about a lot of things. The only thing I'm convicted about is Bitcoin. And I think the only asset that's going to generate higher than Bitcoin is MSTR at this point. At some point, that'll change, right? Because that's just how saturation of capital works. And I don't think we're there yet. So what am I excited about, which I don't have any exposure to? I'm excited about AI. I'm excited about robotics. I was doing some research when I was thinking about robotics and AI and stuff. And I didn't realize that it's something like 35 to 40% of worldwide GDP is human labor based, right? Like that's a huge, huge, huge amount. And so when you think about that, it's like, yeah, robotics could really disrupt that. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I'm excited about. I would say that Bitcoin, which is the revolution on money, and then basically like AI/robotics, which is the revolution on productivity, human productivity, are probably going to be the two biggest sort of macro trends of my investing career. And at some point, there may be a pivot that's due in my portfolio. But I think at this point, understanding Bitcoin to the extent that I do, and understanding, what's going on with MSTR, I think it would be silly of me to try and pivot some of my capital strictly from a risk-adjusted returns perspective to anything else. So I'm not really excited. I'm not really convicted. Let me correct myself. I'm not convicted on anything else more than I'm convicted on Bitcoin and MSTR. But I love watching what's going on. And at some point, there may be a pivot due.
Yeah. British, if you haven't seen it yet, you should watch the Joe Rogan interview of Elon Musk.
Which one?
Very good. I mean, he's only done the one. Joe Rogan interviews Elon Musk.
Well, there's one that he smoked weed, right?
He's done a few. I think he's done 2 or 3.
With Elon? Okay. His latest
sure,
one.
yeah.
His latest one.
His latest one? Yeah, I'll watch it. Look, I think Elon Musk is
robotics and innovation in the future, and
yeah, I think Elon Musk is an absolute genius. I've never been an investor of on a private equity level, right? Private equity, you really got to be able to see the future, so to say. Yeah. And it feels like robotics and AI like that to a certain extent. And I don't know who's going to win. I really have no clue. So until there's a better picture, it's like, okay, I've 20x'd my holdings with Bitcoin, right? I'm about to probably ride that to, I don't know, 100 to 150x with MSTR over the next half a decade. It's like, do I really need to add more risk and do anything else? Or should I just wait until that capital saturation happens in Bitcoin and then figure it out? So if Bitcoin starts catering 15%, 20%, over a 5-year window, at that point now, looking for investments that are catering 40, 50% start making sense. But at this point, I don't really, yeah.
So you got in super early in MSTR. Did you hedge your position on the way down, or you've been like how
hedging?
Okay, you've joined me on the ride down here then.
No, you've joined me finally.
Fair enough. Okay, no, that is fair, but okay, yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to hedge out or.
By the way, I think at some point hedging is a great idea, right? And now we finally have the tools to be able to do that, and the depth of the market to be able to do that. So this is all good. Like at some point, yeah, we'll hedge, right? Of course, I'm going to buy some puts or whatever at some point, and do whatever else. But I kind of look at my income part of my portfolio as like the hedge. So we'll see how that changes over time.
One thing you said on your video yesterday, I'll say real quick, is
Brian's got to hop real quick.
Yeah, I'm just going to say goodbye. Good to talk to you all. Take care.
Nice chat.
So British, one thing you said was in your conversation with Peter Schiff is that his last argument against Bitcoin or MSTR was, he's like, hey, I've already made it anyways. I'm already wealthy. Why do I need to even look at this this risky asset? So as someone like yourself, it's already done pretty like 20x returns. It's good that you are actually looking into
100%.
Come from the gold space. But if you're out parading as someone that's a bear, you better get in and know the nitty gritty details and exactly do the work to understand why you are the most prominent bear, to earn your right to say all the negative things, right? Of saying Sailor's a scam, a crook, it's a Ponzi, etc.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like I don't try and limit myself on learning about what's going on. So I can learn about robotics and AI and talk about it, but that doesn't mean I have to actually invest my capital into it, right? Yet, by the way, like I said, I think there may be a pivot during the future. We'll see. But I think everyone should learn about everything. Yeah, it's stupid to me when someone says I'm already rich enough. Where it's like, well, now I have to discredit everything you're saying because if you're already rich enough, that means that you haven't thought about it with enough depth to have a bull or a bear case. So you're just a retard right now. That's the way I kind of take it.
Love it. Any end of the year hot takes as we wrap this up?
Santa Claus is coming.
That is a hot take.
The Santa Claus rally.
It's the only thing that can save us now, boys. Otherwise, we're singing with everyone. Santa Claus is the only one that can save us.
Christina, anything riveting here that we could clip at the end?
Oh gosh, riveting that you can clip? Definitely not.
Now, anything? I like the ASTS. I remember I bought that it was a SPAC, and we were buying all those initially, and then I was like, this feels too good to be true. I'm gonna get out, and there's a few I got fucked on, but
no, but I think British made a great point. I mean, what is the risk adjusted return, right? Space is risky. Got to get this satellite up in the sky, and it's got to work. So yes, it's my favorite idea. I think there's a ton of upside. I think the market opportunity is absolutely enormous. And I think, the value of that market has already been, partially defined by SpaceX's IPO. But the reality is they have to be able to execute. I think they will, but
1.6 trillion is a lot. I got an email at 200 billion to get invested in those private markets. And I was like, I thought that was high-ish. Looking back, it's not, but Elon's a fucking beast. I mean, no one's better at marketing than he is, and he can his answer on that last interview is incredible. He's like, if you had $1,000, what would you? If you could start over, what would you do? He's like, I'd go get someone to give me more money. That was his answer, and he's admittedly, that's what he's good at. So,
can I ask you guys a question? Have any of you sat in a high-end Chinese electric vehicle?
Yeah. Not a Chinese one, no.
Right.
But I can tell you I own an EV, or I lease one. It's not high-end. It's a Honda, and I absolutely love it.
Right. I completely detest electric cars, right? But the point that I wanted to make was none of you have sat in a high-end Chinese electric car. One of the beautiful things about living in Dubai is that it's actually a free market compared to USA or the UK, right? And so I have, and they were utterly shit 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now you sit in them and you're like, oh, German car market is about to get its ass handed to it, right? And so my point with like risk-adjusted returns, as Christina pointed out, is like execution is extremely important. And absolutely, Elon Musk is at the top of my list of who I can trust to execute on something. But you just don't know what. And so for me, it's like, if I'm buying SpaceX at a $1.6 trillion valuation when it comes out to the public markets, that's going to go to what, $16 trillion of value for me to 10x.
Right.
You know, like I can just sit on Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going from what's the likelihood of Bitcoin going from 100 to 1 million?
Or you just buy ASTS.
I don't even know what that is. So yeah, guess so. Again, Christina mentioned Metaplanet. Now she's mentioning ASTS. There you go.
You mentioned Nakamoto, so I don't know.
Ooh. The gloves are coming off here at the end. I love it.
That's the biggest thing we learned was, or the biggest thing we see is Elon Musk didn't invent an electric car. He didn't invent, early space technology. He's an executor. Ideas guys can talk, but people have been writing, futuristic sci-fi novels for 100 years about flying cars. But he is actually the closest to doing it. And I think it's very similar to Saylor when he's talking about the biggest risk to Bitcoin is a very creative dev or developer with a great idea, but that's not the right idea. That totally takes it off. And I don't know if he's throwing shade at knots or spam filters or exactly what he was getting at there, but I do think it mentions, or it brings the point of Saylor's probably thought of most ideas of capitalizing on his Bitcoin stack. The fact that he's choosing Bitcoin credit, I think, is a sign that, hey, maybe this is the best sustainable long-term approach, and people shouldn't get caught up in other ways to, I think, financialize and make returns on their Bitcoin stack.
Well, he's also got a moat, right? He's also got a moat with the size of stack. Like someone with 30,000 Bitcoin is not going to get access to the preferred markets because you got Strategy there with 660,000 coins.
But that's not true, because look at Strive.
That's a good point too. Yeah, that's a good point too. We'll see what kind of volume Strive gets, but I think Strategy, as soon as if Strategy gets access to the S&P, then they get their debt graded, then they get the preferred products graded. They've got such a big moat around them that everyone else is going to have. It's either going to become really easy for everyone else to do it, or it's going to become incredibly hard. We'll see how that unfolds.
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. And we're excited. Tomorrow we have our Friday stack. So if you guys are watching, you guys want to earn some Bitcoin, we do some trivia. It's a little fun thing during lunchtime on Fridays. Everyone follow British HODL if you're not already. Half the people probably do already, but also MC Khristina, and we are at 21 Rates HQ. Any final words here while we still have you guys on?
I'll just say my bet with British still stands. Whether or not I win will be to be determined end of 1Q. I do still think Metaplanet has a chance to become the #2 holder of Bitcoin by then. But we'll see. Things have definitely stalled out, and we're waiting for developments.
The good news is, Christina, God loves a trier. So we'll see. You never know, right? Hot takes. Yeah, look, the goal for everyone who's listening to this, that's involved in Bitcoin, understands Bitcoin, should be to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible. It is the best risk-adjusted market. And so, you've got the C-suite of the US government now behind it. You've got basically the C-suite of Wall Street behind it. Every bank is now coming in. Not only are they behind it, they're now coming out and actively trying to compare who's got the biggest Bitcoin dick, right? So this is going to accelerate at this point. And your goal should be to not get distracted by, other people's sacks of shit, and should be to own the underlying asset, because it's the first time in human history where you can actually find a trend, find a macro trend, and actually own a piece of the underlying asset. You can't do that. You couldn't do that in the internet boom, right? You couldn't. Imagine if you had during the 2000 tech boom, right? Imagine if you could just say, I'm just going to own a piece of the internet. Fuck trying to pick the winner. I'm going to just own piece of the internet, you would have been the #1 winner out of everyone besides maybe one company or two companies, right? So for most people, this is the first time in human history you have a chance to equalize. Don't fuck this up. And of course, you know, if you're listening to people that are trying to tell you to trade in and out of your Bitcoin, whatever, you know, good. Like at the end of the day, it's capitalism. Do whatever the fuck you want to do with your money. But the reality is there's no other risk-adjusted return. Everything's going to seem more exciting because the big boys are in, and the #1 objective is going to be to crash your dopamine around Bitcoin. And that will allow them to basically scoop up your Bitcoin because you'll just let it go.
Love it. Joe, do you want to close this out?
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for joining. Christina, as always, you are a treat to have on the show. Love your personal takes, and as well as like, hey, let's take the opposite end and educate people. We don't need to always be a marketing arm for treasury companies. We need to look critically at them, and does it beat the CAGR of MSTR? Like British said, British HODL, really appreciate you coming on. We'll have to get you two back on together specifically, and hash out this Metaplanet bet. We'll see, probably in the new year.
Yeah, get some gloves on it, like karate combat or something.
It's been my pleasure.
Awesome. All right, see you guys. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Bye.